say thank you, Ashe, so my ancestors can hear me. Good manners when I'm asking them to heal me. Life is like a clusterfuck of hornets, do you feel me? But sometimes time slows down and you can see the wings beating.
Blessings, fellow weird and wild ones. My name is Goddess, aka G, aka your friendly neighborhood witch. I'm a cinephile, kinkster, brat, and queen switch. Thank you for joining me on our way back to wholeness. This is our temple, our playground, our life, and our truths. For season 3, I will be talking with the fam about sacred sex, the sensuality and healing, and practicing healthy love. This work is for the collective from me, Brenda, and Kay. And there's a lot of magic that goes on behind the scenes. Find ways to support and practice reciprocity for all the dope folks on the show at the links below. Grab your toys, your potions, and your lotions, and let's reclaim our pleasure.
Tin Tiny Talks is a global, non-traditional artist in residency based in Portland, Oregon, that focuses on the Black, Indigenous, trans, gender non-conforming, two-spirit, and queer creative diaspora. How does it work? Each year, 10 artists are selected as artists in residency both from Oregon and from across the United States and beyond. These artists will complete commissions which will be presented during the 10 Tiny Talks Festival based in Portland, Oregon. Go to cravetheater.org for more information. That's cravetheatre.org.
Dalia Kinsey is a registered dietitian and creator of the Body Liberation for All podcast, a show dedicated to amplifying the health and happiness of LGBTQIA+ and BIPOC folks. On a mission to spread joy, reduce suffering, and eliminate health disparities in the QT BIPOC community, Dalia rejects diet culture, which is rooted in white supremacy, and teaches folks how to use nutrition as a self-care and personal empowerment tool. Welcome, Dalia.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited we get to have part B of our combo.
I am too. And I'll be honest, we were talking before this, and I feel like there were some gems that we already talked about, but we'll just come back to those gems if they fit into the actual conversation. I am so thankful that you are on season 3 of the podcast. And also, I'm just really excited when I meet a fellow person, especially a Black person, who has escaped the cult that is being a Jehovah's Witness. So, welcome, fam. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, and a queer person and a non-binary person. It's just it's all of the things. It's so funny because I listened back to our episode recently. I was being a little chicken shit and I hadn't released it yet. I took a break. And so it's going to come out later on this year. But I just thought, wow, I sound so pitiful. I'm still laughing and everything, but I feel like hearing you validate some of the trauma, it was really sinking in. And I'm like, wow, this shit's really sad on many levels.
It is, and you're right. It is, because not everyone makes it out, and then not everyone makes it out and is able to be okay outside because there's no support for, and we'll get into this. When you escape a cult, there is no support for you that you thought you had growing up. It has all been ripped from you. And you are told that you are now unworthy of the love you were brought up with. And to have that happen to you is such a mind fuck. And then to not be prepared for what is reality outside of a cult.
It's we so laugh. Much.
It is horrible.
It's so weird. It's and I know so many people who obviously we've decided we could laugh or we could cry. And there's something about, it's the absurdity or how intense the suffering is, or the fact that you survived. And when you look back at it, it's so bizarre that it makes you laugh,
Mhm.
but it's hard to explain like how gnarly it was when it makes you giggle. But I'm like, low key, this is a trauma response.
You were so right. Okay. Because we could go right into it, but like, let's like, okay, I'm gonna start how I usually start. But yes, like, if you are a person who is escaping or escaped or thinking of escaping a cult, we feel you, fam. We feel you, especially if you are BIPOC, queer. It's a whole nother ball game. So we feel you. Okay. So how we always start the podcast is we share pronouns and the race, ethnicity in which we embody, and we do a check-in question. So I can go first. My name's Goddess. My pronouns are he, she, and they, and I am Black-bodied. How about you, Dalia?
My name is Dalia, and I don't use any pronouns at all, which has been quite an adjustment that I'm still struggling with because none of the pronouns felt right to me. But I'm non-binary, so no pronouns is part of my relating to being gender fluid. And I'm blackety black. That feels like the only thing that makes any sense to me because I'm like a little Afro-Cuban, a little Caribbean, but just black all the time.
Yeah. And I find that like people who are Black that come on the podcast, they're always like, I am blacker than black. I'm black. I'm black. I'm black. I'm like, all right. Say it proud. I get you. But thank you for also like shouting out to, you know, the intricacies that is your Blackness too. I definitely appreciate that. And I also had a period in time where I was just going by my name. That felt really right. So I feel you there. I definitely feel you there. So in this moment, where do you feel pleasure in your body, and where do you hope it is at the end of our time together? And I found that some people aren't feeling pleasure. So if you aren't feeling pleasure, where do you maybe hope to feel it at the end of our time together?
It's so interesting. For all my issues, I feel like I still feel a lot of joy and pleasure day to day, like intermittently, of course. But I feel it in the center of my chest. And I'm hoping it's going to like radiate out into my belly and my shoulders.
That's wonderful. You are just like a naturally joyous person. So like even when you're telling me about your day and it's like not going the best, like there's a certain glow that you have yes, it's shitty. But like there is something there. Yeah. I definitely feel about you. Right now I'm feeling joy. I'm looking over and seeing my dog like just staring at me, like passed out, and there's a bottle of wine on my bed. And I'm just looking at this scene, and like there's like a book and pillows, and I'm just like, I'm feeling joy in receiving, like left side of my body, not only because I'm looking to the left, but just like receiving. So like left side of my body feels really lit up right now, and I hope that like spreads to the rest of my body by the end of this.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the cult already. People, you get the 411 kind of. We laugh and we cry at the same time. But when you first left the cult and were exploring your sexuality, what were you really excited for and worried about?
I was really excited for exploring and feeling like I had a way to connect to people on a deeper level. Like I imagined I was going to learn all these secrets about people, and I'd probably watched too many movies where, an American and a French person or something, they meet on vacation and they have an excellent 3 days in bed together where they just talk. You know, there's like multiple movies like that where people just like talk for like a whole long weekend. And so in my head, I was like, that is what happens. That is what it's going to look like. And we're going to see each other and share each other in all these great ways. And it will be complete and we won't have to see each other again. Or we maybe can, but it's all going to be like that, you know, like people bearing their souls and it just being mind blowing. That's what I was looking forward to. I don't know if I'm still waiting for that to happen. There's certainly been moments that like came close, but I don't know that anyone else was watching these movies, making these plans to connect with people at these really profound levels for days. I was like, no, I need you to like clear your calendar. I know, you got things to do, but this needs to be like snack, lovemaking, deep, profound conversations for a minimum of 72 hours. Yeah. So far, no one else has felt like that's something they needed to do. What I was dreading was getting some kind of VD that would eat my brain, maybe make me senile, because these were the videos they showed us in elementary school. They really didn't do any sex ed. All they did was scare tactics for celibacy. And
you mean like within the school or like outside?
Oh, in public school. Public school. Oh, it's true. You know, in the cult, what they made me think was going to happen was that all cis men would have no concept of consent and that it was going to be real rapey out there and that I would probably at some point have that experience. But I figured I would survive because almost everybody I know has already survived some kind of abuse at that time when I was leaving the cult. So I'm like, this is part of life, which is just a horrible outlook to have when you're going out in the world trying to learn to maintain your boundaries. But also something that the cult had kind of taught was like, if you're in the room, you've pretty much given up your right to control which way this goes. So I just kind of accepted like, oh, consent won't always be a thing, but I'm going to still have all these great connections with, someone else has been watching these movies and making these plans. And the whole STD thing came so much from public school and honestly, even the health department, because I remember I was not young at all when I decided to leave and to, get rid of the celibacy as soon as possible. I was already 22. I was just barely 22, but I was 22. And I, like a responsible young person, went to the health department. I didn't have insurance. This is back when you didn't have to. And I made it clear that I wanted some sex ed information and that I wanted to get on the pill. And instead of them being like, oh, that's great, let me get you a pamphlet, I got a lecture from the nurse about how sex outside of wedlock is a sin. And that what I had been doing so far, which at best now I would define as like heavy petting, only the cult people say that, right? But it was like, it wasn't anything major. It was like literally nothing. It was something you could do with someone you've known for less than half a second. Yeah. Yes, true. But she was like, yeah, and you probably already have something from literally not having sex. And I had a panic attack right there in the office. I had like a horrible pap smear because when you go to a lot of health departments, they only have one size speculum. So it was like a full blown traumatic experience. And she like begrudgingly gave me like, I don't know, 2 or 3 condoms, super stingy. And it discouraged me from getting on the pill. But I did anyway. And so I did all of that research and planning, and I basically was refused the information I needed from a medical provider. She didn't give me any information about safer sex practices, exactly nothing. And so you definitely know that if I was thinking, and once I try to be straight for like half a second and I move on, what's safer sex going to look like with people who aren't cis men? Well, you definitely couldn't ask that from somebody who's like, you don't have sex outside of marriage. So yes, those were my concerns. Like not knowing how to maintain a boundary. How do I know what a predator looks like? And how do I not get pregnant? How do I not get, I kept thinking I was going to get syphilis for some reason, and it was going to eat my brain based on some slideshow I'd seen, probably like 95 or something. And yeah, that it was like on a loop in my head, was like, I'm going to be punished. Like I want to be free and I want to do what I want, but there will be a price to pay, was what was running in my head all the time.
Right. And I think that that was there for me too, of like, I am now free to do what I want, but there will be a price to pay. Like I must be punished in order to be free. And like, it seems like really fucked up to me now, but back then, like that was just like something I accepted. Like I am now out in the world, and the world is hard and punishing. Not to say that the cult was not, because it definitely was, but it's almost like being told you're leaving the Garden of Eden to go into, you know, the world, which is basically what like I was told. But like when you were talking, what came up for me? Do you remember that video? It was probably made in like early 2000s, but it was on Dinah, and like the modern day version of it was like she got in the car with this guy and like ended up being sexually assaulted. But like you could like, instead of showing the sexual assault, which thank you for not showing that, but like there was just like this breeze with like trees and you just saw like the leaves falling. I will always remember that movie because it told me that very thing of like, you can have your freedom, you can have your fun, but you are asking to be punished.
Yes.
Like, that is what the price of freedom
and
is.
even her
It's like
attitude after that, she was so repentant. But repentant for what? For being sexually assaulted? So basically the whole lesson was you shouldn't have been in that situation. And the implication was that nobody's sexually assaulting anyone in the cult, which is a load of crap.
Yes.
Right?
like the cult we left like is known now. I know, I did not know this when I was in it, but now that I'm grown, I know that like it is known outside of the cult for like harboring sexual predators, like people who harm children. So, and that's not to say like I'm not specifically trying to target the cult that we were leaving, because the reality is that these things happen in and outside of cults. It's just more concentrated within cults. And like you were saying, is that is a really sad part, is that we have to, as people who have been raised to be submissive or apologetic for what we were born to be, and how we define that, like we have been told that like it's our cross to bear to be punished for simply existing. So
that's just so true. And it's the framing that starts from before you're even big enough to have any concept of what sexuality is. So it's like already a belief system in your head that women are tempting. Cover your elbow. I had somebody to tell me I needed to cover my elbows. They weren't joking. That I needed to look out because there are a lot of dirty old men out there. And that as a child, I needed to be careful about my collarbone. I'm not kidding, because some people apparently find an exposed collarbone very exciting. And I never heard anything about how maybe these men should learn to keep their hands to themselves. Never. All you ever heard about was how you had better modify your behavior because you're like this snack out here tempting everyone. So even before you have any interest in expressing your sexuality, you're told that it's your job to cover yourself so no one else is essentially forced by their nature to violate or use your body for their entertainment.
Right. Mm. That's the truth of it. Like, period. That's just how we've been trained in and outside of these cults. And there's just such another reality, multiple thousands of realities we could be living in except for that one. But
It's so funny because out in the real world, I can think of one situation where actually there's probably more than one, because even think about the Me Too movement happening after we were out for a while, expressing our sexuality, living our lives. The definition of what was sexual assault has changed in my lifetime. So there are plenty of things that I was like, well, it happened and I'm fine. That now, or I think also if I was younger or raised in a different environment, I would remember these things more clearly. I can only think of 2 or 3 instances where I felt like this was a near miss, and probably just one where I was concerned about my safety. But the numbers were high, let's just say that. So percentage-wise, I was constantly coming into contact with people who really thought consent was the most important thing. And especially kink aware people or kink people. And just so many men value not taking advantage of people who have like lesser upper body strength. Like it's a big value. There were so many people who were the exact opposite of what I was told all cis men would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something to be said for like across the board in our society, in this like westernized societies, we are very I don't want to say childlike because I feel like that's demonizing the childness of it, but like we are very ill-equipped to be present and be with our emotions and to access and navigate our sexuality and sexual urges. And so when you throw people into adulthood who have not been given models of how to navigate their sexuality in healthy ways that like feed their creativity, feed their desires, while also holding them accountable and being authentic in that, we just have a lot of hurt, traumatized, and numbed out people who are then hurting and traumatizing other people.
This is so true. And like the only time I felt like I ever got really great information from a healthcare provider regarding sex ed was when I went to get screened for HIV for the first time. And that person was sex positive. And they also talked about the emotional complexity of navigating condom usage or safer sex practices. It was the first person who ever explained to me, what do you say when the person's like, I don't know what a dental dam even is? Because that's another thing I kept coming across was there's so many people who I would say are queer, but they don't self-identify as queer, but they have a lot of sex with people of the same gender. But they don't want to participate in the culture that's around that, and they don't fully engage enough to learn about safer sex practices. So they just like do it whenever and don't use any kind of barriers. So if you say like, oh, let's use a dental dam, they legitimately won't know what it is. Or especially if it's a younger person too, then if they had the same type of crap sex ed I did, they've never heard of it. And you don't even see them for sale everywhere you go. But like with that, I guess sex counselor or I don't know, public health worker, I don't know exactly what their title was. They explain like, oh, well, you could cut a condom and DIY the dental dam. There's other things you could do. And these are the feelings that may come up for you when you bring it up. And you kind of have to be willing to walk away from the situation to be able to navigate safer sex practices with somebody who isn't as invested in that as you are. So it's kind of like any kind of negotiation. If you're not ready to leave, if the price that somebody pitches you for something is too high or too low or whatever, whether you're trying to get paid or trying to buy something, then you're at a disadvantage. And so when you're not sure about your worth, maybe because you're not sure that you're attractive, you're not sure that you're appealing or you're whatever, there's so many different reasons why we think we're not enough based on what we've been told over the years. If you are also using sex as a form of validation, then navigating condom usage with someone who doesn't think that's important is going to be impossible, practically impossible, because you'll dread having to ask. And you'll get so upset if they're like, well, no, you're not worth it to me. And then how will you feel if you compromise after you try to set a boundary? It's a habit that you have to build. It's a muscle you have to build when you set a boundary. And every time you don't enforce that, you're kind of building up a habit in the opposite direction of setting these kind of sort of boundaries that can be pushed about at any time. And that puts you in a really vulnerable position too.
Right. It does. I'm like, on the other hand of that, like, we have to also practice, like, are we safe people to say no to? Like, are you willing to, lean on the side of, like, the person who feels more comfortable with more protection? Like, at the end of the day, that's probably the better bet anyway, to have that more protection. But, like, are you a person who someone can say no to and hold yourself accountable and be like, I deeply respect that you have those boundaries. I can't meet those. And so we can go our separate ways or do something else, whatever. Or are you going to shame and make someone feel bad and, like, make them think that they're unworthy? Like, it's so both. And like I said, we're just so ill-equipped to have those conversations across the board in our society.
Yeah.
But, like, what you were just talking about goes, like, to the next question, which is, how do you think narratives on the body, queerness, and desire affected how you showed up in intimacy with yourself and with partners?
I think one of the biggest barriers that I had was thinking that whether or not you manifest your queerness is a choice, and that I needed, because I'm pansexual, to focus on straight passing relationships first, even though the first thing I wanted to do really was to get on out there and meet other people with vaginas, basically. But I was like, I better, let me just give this other thing a shot. And I still do.
You say that. I feel like
I'm like, gotta try this first. And I guess I thought, like, maybe that other interest was going to fade, but it's always felt kind of 50-50. And I think it's the training around these really traditional gender roles that make me feel like it's easier to be in a long-term relationship with a cis man, because I haven't been taught, and being in a relationship with another person with a womb has not been modeled, really. Or what types of things will come up for you when you have been socialized to want to draw away from the whole reason that you're together, because that's another challenge. And even how comfortable you are with expressing your queerness affecting your ability to even have an orgasm, or understanding that the orgasm isn't the be all end all. And then understanding sex in a way that's very heteronormative was also a detriment, in thinking that there has to be penetration or there has to be a climax, that somehow will parallel a money shot, all of that was such a hindrance to seeing how much you really can enjoy each other's company without there being a goal or a point at which you both say, oh, now we've seen this thing, so it's done.
Like this product. There has to be a baby, there has to be an orgasm, there has to be a, yeah. I deeply resonate with that. I think for me, like, it took me a while to realize that I was queer. And it's not that I wasn't doing gay ass shit when I was like 5, because I was. Like, I would look at my mom's magazines, like the bra catalogs, and pick out which woman I wanted to marry. I do not know how I did not know. But like, it's really like the cult, like really like they do so much, and we'll get into that later about like the psyche, but like to make sure that you have built all these walls to not knowing. And I think that that's in and outside of the cult. But so like, so when I was starting to become sexually active, I wasn't actually thinking that I was going to be having sex with people who had vaginas, or didn't have like their sexual organs on the outside of their body, you know, like, and so I would study porn, mostly white, like actually predominantly white porn, and take all the notes and like, you know, make sure that I could perform being this sexual at the time, like experienced woman, you know, at a young age, 13, which I guess is not young these days. But I found myself slowly starting to watch lesbian porn, again, white lesbian porn, and thinking like, oh, this is like something that I do. Like, I don't know how I made sense of it in my head, but like for me, it wasn't like my actual reality. It had to be like compartmentalized in this place in my head where like, I'm doing this and it's not of me or from me. It's just something I do. And so it took me a really long time, I think, when I first like started actually having like feelings that I could address and be free to share and address with other people, for another person who was not a cis man, like that I was able to come to terms with that. But it really, you do start to like see these weird ways in which you were blocked, or like, and you continue to block yourself from experiencing things.
It is so strange because it's the more you become aware of how much your socialization affects your concept of reality or your perception of everything in your life, you find yourself sometimes wondering, is that really what I like? Is that really what I want? Or is that just what I've always seen framed as the best thing? Or is this what always gets the best lighting and the best attention? Because even now, if you're not going to, you know, a company that really focuses on queer folks of color expressing their sexuality in a sweet, you know, consensual, exciting way, all the different ways, you'll find when you even look at sites these days that are not paid, the lighting that you see and just how perfect and flawless everyone looks in a white film versus most of the stuff that comes up if you look for Black, even the language. It's no wonder people don't really want to interact with it. So if you look for white, first of all, you would only find white referenced if it's some sort of interracial context, because the assumption is white is neutral. So if you just look for a woman, you'll get a white one. If you look for Black, you're going to come up with all these derogatory terms like hood girl or abused, whatever. Everything is so skewed toward animalistic and not being respected versus the white women. It's like, oh, she's so sexy. And oh, there's seduction. There's this, there's that. And it's got the great lighting versus the grainy one where you just feel like, ugh, just why can't it be the same? It's not apples and apples.
No.
So when you find you don't even want to look at that other stuff, there could be so many different things at play. But what I found fascinating, even as an adult, when I actually got photographed by a person of color who has been trained to photograph people of color, to see like, oh, I can get the same polished look. But when I used to get pictures in the 80s and the 90s, oh, that's because the person wasn't trained to make my skin look its best. And so much technology is so centered on whiteness that you're out here thinking, oh, our skin is just more sensitive and it's more blotchy and it's this and it's that. It's like, no, the technology to make your skin look like editorial just hasn't been centered around your complexion for so long that only now are we starting to see things that are comparable. And then you realize like, oh, that's just like not how humans look. Like humans don't have perfectly clear skin and nobody's asshole is naturally bleached. Okay. Like the concept of somebody bleaching their asshole was like so new to me. And I'm thinking, wow, we're comparing ourselves to people who are prepared for a close up on their butthole. Mm-hmm. Of course they're going to do something before the close up, right? Like that's not how your butthole has to look. That's standard.
Yeah, I didn't know they bleached buttholes until Bridesmaids, which is a fairly recent movie. But like, I did not know people got that shit done until that movie. I was like, oh shit, should I be getting my butthole pieces?
But sadly, I bet that was like a lot of people's first thought was like, oh my God, am I the only one who doesn't know that I was supposed to be doing that? Here I am out here with just a regular asshole.
Get my asshole together. The amount of butthole talk in this season of the podcast. Yeah. Okay, so what were some of the like laughable mishaps and celebrations of exploring you and other folks' bodies you had after leaving the cold buttholes and all?
Yeah, it's really hard to decide. I had a lot of really magical moments, and I just feel like in the beginning, if anything, I feel like in hindsight, all of my early behavior was cringy and laughable, but not in a good way. Just like when you're way older than everyone else is to be having your first this and that and the other, you're always in your head about trying to not look inexperienced. And the easiest thing to do is just to go ahead and say that you're inexperienced and only select partners that can hold space for that instead of trying to pretend. I don't know. Not a lot of laughable moments that age well, like I was saying before we started recording. I had some really problematic moments because I had been raised in such a misogynistic cult, and the South is very misogynistic. Black American culture is very misogynistic. And so I had so much resentment towards cis men that I really did not prioritize their feelings enough or always see their humanity. And so there were certain moments where I was really hypercritical about their bodies, stature, all kinds of things. But it was more of a retaliatory type of thing. And then there were definitely moments too where I started to feel very competitive with the cis men in my life because I could pull so many more people with vaginas than they could. And in hindsight, that part is still kind of funny to me, how I finally stopped feeling bad when anyone would say anything critical about my body. Because I was like, yeah, say what you want, but if we go out tonight and we count, I'm going to bury you. Like I can pull so much more than you can. And it was a very juvenile thing, but for a long time, it made me feel so much better about no longer being the object that's perceived, but being the one who got to consume beauty and being the one who got to be the one who chooses, not the one who waits around to be chosen and to get approval. And I remember when that whole scam, I want to say scam artist, what was it called? Pickup artist shit was circulating. And I remember somebody negging me, and this is a long time ago. So at first I didn't really get what was happening. And I had the totally typical reaction to the negging, which was to want more approval. But just out of nowhere, without even really getting a clear understanding what was going on, one day when this person negged me again and compared me to someone else he'd been hooking up with, I just gave a completely honest answer about how that was no big deal because I've just been over here with this person and we had a simultaneous orgasm, which you and I have never had. And this person had more upper body strength. It was great. And they're just not as weird and distant as you. I just totally, completely just focused on the truth. And I could hear like the wind just going out of the sails and not realizing that like he was manufacturing things for me to feel insecure about. But he was not ready to be annihilated like that. I'm like, you're out here deliberately trying to manipulate me. And all I did was tell you honestly, like, actually, though, you're not shit. So take that in. And in hindsight, it's also toxic and not healthy. But when I could just hear like the sails collapsing, it made me laugh. It was very petty. But especially now knowing that, oh, you were deliberately trying to make me feel inferior so that I would be easier to control. Fuck you and your sales.
Yeah. Fuck you and your sales. I have to agree with you. Yeah, coming out of it, I was the same way. Like, I really enjoyed the competition, or I thought it was enjoying it. Like, I got of like competing with other men, to like, I don't know, to like feel validated, and even if it was like competing at like, I can pull more numbers than you, no matter what the gender is. Like, there was something about it that was like, felt really like liberating for me. Now looking back, it's like not liberating and it feels really toxic. But to go from like being told that you have to submit to everyone, especially if they have a penis, to being like, actually your penis ain't worth shit, like, felt amazing at the time. So definitely lots of like laughable moments of being drunk in bars and just fucking with white men's heads. I will be honest. And there was a time where I was actually like really like my anger for like what happened to me and just like the disrespect and dismissal of my body, I then perpetuated on like men. And so that's something I have to reconcile with and like hold myself accountable to. But in terms of like laughable that I think I can still laugh at, I'm trying to think of like one that like really sticks out.
Doesn't it just remind you of how much you've changed and grown? Because you laughed at all kinds of stuff at the time. Yeah. And now it's like, what? Whoa, that wasn't very nice.
No. Exactly. I think, okay, so this wasn't that long ago. It had to be in like the last 5 years, but apparently I had misunderstood what getting your salad tossed was.
Oh my goodness. What did you think it meant?
I thought it just meant getting ate out. Like,
okay, gotcha.
Being like ate out, like my vagina, like eaten out. But it wasn't. And when I brought it up with like the person at the time, they're like, oh, I don't really do that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't do that? Like, we cannot be any kind of like, if you do not.
That's great. I bet they were like, wow, they're so adamant. I mean, wow.
I mean, like, I wasn't pushing to do it, but I was just like, oh. And then, like, they explained, like, wait, what do you think it means? And I was like, oh, I thought that was hilarious. They thought it was hilarious, but I didn't know. And I was like, oh, there's still so much.
I love that at some point they picked up that you must think it meant something different. That's the best part for me. They were like, wait a minute.
That's not. And it turns out I do like getting my salad tossed, but that's a whole different.
Oh, man. I can think about injuries that I feel like came to just being so new, like getting very overzealous about salad tossing, because I'm not a fan of receiving, but I was getting very zealous about giving and literally tore, what do you call this part under your tongue? Is that like your frenulum or something? Oh, yeah, more than once. And I'm just like, well, okay.
Wow, that is very animated use of the mouth. I'm so sorry.
You don't know the limits because you're like, you don't ever really use all of the parts of the body, right? And then you start trying to use them all and you're like, whoa, it doesn't go in that direction or it doesn't go that far. What It probably could have been snipped or something when I was an infant. I feel like other people have more to work with, or maybe I just got overzealous. I don't know. But now I'm like very cautious
of like the use of the tongue whippage.
Yeah, and I remember as far as laughable, at the time I wasn't really amused, but discovering what harnesses were and which ones actually work and which ones are like puzzles. And nobody wants to do a puzzle when they need the strap. So it just learned so many things.
Yeah.
Full of hard knocks.
And it is a learning as you go, being surprised by what your body can do, what noises you will make, what noises the rest of your body will make, and learning that other people don't find it weird.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. Yeah. There's just.
And that aging has been an adventure because there are so many things that I read about on these message boards for middle-aged people with vaginas that I was like, I can't imagine how that would happen. How does one queef? What is a queef? What is that? I don't understand. What it, and that it's just like, just wait. Let everything start relaxing and just like drooping, and you'll find out. Give it a minute.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I still am so thankful for my most recent partner and just being like holding space for me to be surprised by the different reactions my body makes when it is fully relaxing into like,
oh yes,
being turned the fuck out. It's
that
wild.
You know, I said I couldn't think of any laughable moment. I will say this made me laugh in real time, and it's not problematic. But I, like you said, getting fully relaxed. I've never seen in any adult film somebody poot for real, like actually fart, right? And so it didn't even occur to me that was a thing that could happen. But when I did it, I was with someone I was so comfortable with. And they were so not chill about it. They're like, did you just? And I have never laughed so hard. I didn't feel sorry. I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel ashamed. I just thought, so that can happen. Okay. Deal with it and keep going.
I love that there is no motherfucking shame in your game. Yes, that part. Yeah. So the body is weird and wild, and I love it.
It is a very strange thing. It's like the more you look at it, the weirder it gets.
I feel like for folks who are not cis, not hetero, and not white, at least, okay, I'm going to speak for myself. I feel like I'm always going through new puberties. Like there's just a new puberty that comes once a year, every other year, and I'm just like, oh, this is what this feels like.
It does feel like it's all these levels of acceptance. And I know I've noticed more and more as I'm getting older that people also don't represent the aging body at all. So there's all these things that happen to the body that you're probably never going to see in a movie. Like maybe nowadays you might see it on something you stream. So you aren't really ready for it. Or when you hear about it, you think, oh, that just happens to some people. Or like, oh, that just happened to my mom or my whomever. But yeah, like a lot of this stuff I also thought was something that just happens to people who have had children. And a lot of things that happen as you get older, it's just time. Yeah. So it maybe will happen sooner if you've had children, but it's still totally going to happen. Stuff just keeps on relaxing.
Oh my, I am not looking forward to it and looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to doing it, literally doing it with people who like I can have that space with to have it. I think that's what that's about. Oh, speaking some truth. Yeah, speaking some truth. Okay. So on like a more serious note, in cults, there's such a deep manipulation of the psyche. How can we make space for the uncomfortable and unexpected as we escape and dismantle fear-based ways of being? And this could be even outside of the cults, quite honestly.
That's such a big one because I feel like we are seeing that all over the place these days because there's so much. I don't know if the word is extremism, but like we just witnessed a extremely manipulative, like dictator type personality capturing the attention of like more than half of the US population. Right. We're just lucky that a lot of those folks like don't ever vote. It seems like this question just applies to so many people. I've been working on getting more comfortable with uncertainty, which I think is one of the big reasons why so many people have had so much trouble with COVID, because it's this prolonged time period in which you're aware that nothing is certain. Nothing ever was certain, but we didn't used to think about it all the time. Yeah. Just every now and then you were reminded, if there was this death in the family, sudden loss of a job, all the things that people say are such a source of distress for people. But all of those things you already knew they could happen. And you even notice that a lot of times when people are really grieving the death of someone, it isn't that the death was a surprise. It isn't that they didn't know it was coming, but it also brings up for you all this uncertainty about when is my time coming and what should I really be doing with my time? At least for me personally, what usually plagues me the longest is all of the uncertainty that comes up when someone's suddenly gone. Like, who am I going to turn to now for this thing that this person and I used to have together? And what will people do when I'm not here? It's all the questions and being pulled out of the present moment. And there's so many people that just crave certainty, and they will be more comfortable if somebody lies to them and says, I know exactly what's going to happen. Or I know how you can get rid of COVID. Drink bleach. There's so many people who they knew that was ridiculous, but that desire to be told there's always a solution and you don't have to be uncomfortable and you can feel certain and free every day of your life, that has a lot of appeal, but it isn't real. And so learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable has been one of my biggest challenges. And it applies in almost every area of life, with conversations you need to have, boundaries you need to maintain, things you need to do to feel like your best self. It's a real chore though, and it isn't always fun. And so I'm in it some days and then I'm out of it. But what's been so disappointing to me leaving the cult is realizing that I'm never going to feel as sure about everything as I did when I was fully indoctrinated. I felt so grounded. I felt so purposeful all the time. And a lot of days now, I just feel like, you know, I'm being tossed about by my own emotional state and uncertainty. And like, am I making the most of my time on the planet? What's next? What will I do? Whereas before, we were trained to think that we were going to be persecuted. At some point, we were probably all going to be tested in some horrible way. But it didn't really cause a lot of anxiety because you were so confident you were just right about everything.
Right, exactly. And it was all mapped out, and like at the end of it, there was going to be a paradise, and you wouldn't have to worry about any of these things. Like literally, what happened in this life was not supposed to matter as much as the reward of the paradise.
Right. And then that was like your future was clearly defined, that there was only going to be this comparatively brief period where you wouldn't know what was going to happen. But you still, even then, had a basic idea because they basically feed you prophecies of what to expect and give you this sense that everything's already planned out. So even if you don't know exactly the plan, you feel comfortable because there is a plan.
Yeah.
And you know exactly what you have to, right? And you know what your part is. What are you supposed to be doing? You know exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Am I part of the 144,000? Am I part of the like people like who, which group am I in? And what are my tasks? What is my role?
Yeah.
That is very, very true. And like what you said about being comfortable with the uncomfortable is I feel like so key, because if you can sit in your discomfort, have grace for it, and understand that like you are allowing yourself to shed years and years of things that were simply not true. Give yourself time and give yourself space and give yourself love. I think that can help be a buoy for people who are just tossed out and not given anything, not a boat, not a paddle, not nothing. And then they truly are isolated and alone, and then have like these compounding mental health challenges and barriers and no support system. And obviously there's more that needs to be done in that realm to support people who are coming out of cults. But I feel like that could be like definitely a good avenue to start with.
It really is so much, because, you know, when you go, I hear marginalized people mention this all the time, like when they seek out therapy, that it's so exhausting when you're in crisis to have to explain to somebody the context of where the trauma is coming from. And that to me came up a lot with trying to explain what all about the cult was affecting my life in real time. Like, you know, being ostracized, or trying to explain like, no, I came from a 2-parent home, but I literally have no one right now. No one. Because I went from feeling like I had this massive extended family that extended all over the globe to literally nobody overnight.
Right. It's yeah. Exactly. And like trying to explain to someone who also calls you, oh, you're a Jehovah's, and you're like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but I'm not a Jehovah's. It's no, like a plural and also like a I don't know. It was every time someone's like, "Oh, you're Jehovah's," I'm like, "What the fuck is
It's
that?"
so ridiculous because it's like, it's agitating because you want to correct it. And then you're like, what am I doing? I don't care anymore. Like, but why do I want to correct it so bad? And then when somebody says like, oh, so they go to church, and you're like, no, they don't go to church, not church.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah. So many years of feeling like it was also your job to educate everybody about this religious minority you were in.
Yeah. And now somehow you're still doing it while also like trying to, so on that note, tell us about your work and what, because you do a lot of work with dismantling narratives and systems. And so, tell us about your work. How can we contact you? What are you currently offering?
What I'm most passionate about is helping people make the mindset shifts that you need to make for your wellness and your life to be exactly what you want it to be. So like with everything we've been talking about with how we're socialized to reject the body, reject our orientation, reject our gender identity, all of this affects a lot of areas of life, but definitely body image, how you relate to feeding yourself, nurturing yourself, allowing yourself to rest. And so many people just focus on the size of the body when they talk about wellness, instead of all these other thoughts that influence how hard is it for you to trust that you know how much to eat. If you've been told everything you do intuitively is wrong, why would you think, oh, I can trust my gut? But at the same time, if you can learn to sit with discomfort, to know that any growth is going to feel like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, that's just how it goes. Like you're never going to constantly be up, and up. Like that's not how it is. It always ebbs and flows. And if you can learn to be more gracious with yourself and really think about where are some of these feelings of not being worthy really coming from? And what am I chasing when I keep restricting or punishing my body for being itself? And addressing the very real factor that feeling like you don't recognize your body can play in you may be having an eating disorder or just being super uncomfortable with weight gain. If you don't want for your hips to be perceived as feminine because people are out here associating certain physical characteristics with certain genders, primarily just 2, right? Not understanding that not everybody with breasts is a woman. Not everybody with a vagina is a woman. Not everybody who has curvy hips, doesn't have a penis or sexual organs outside of their body. Like those are all things that affect the way we eat, the way we take care of ourselves, the way we relate to our body. So as a registered dietitian, it's really crucial to me to let clients bring all of that experience into their wellness, because that idea that the size of your body is the biggest determinant of your health is BS. And how happy you are is really the game changer. And how happy can you be if you think that every time you look at your body, you should be feeling guilty or like you need to do some penance. So I can be found at daliakinsey.com. And what I really want everybody to do is to go ahead and pre-order the book. If you're listening to this after February 8th of 2022, you can go ahead and just straight up order the book. But I have written Decolonizing Wellness. I really honestly feel like I channeled it. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly where it came from, but I think it's the years of lived experience of being taught to reject every single natural impulse and being told that like your Black body's not good enough, your being non-binary is not a thing, just, all the stuff. And seeing how that has affected my sense of well-being, I know this is the book that I needed. Even now, I definitely needed it years ago. And I'm just so happy to be able to offer it to other people. There's nothing else out there like it at the moment. Hopefully there will be more like it soon. But right now, Decolonizing Wellness is the only body positive book specifically for QT BIPOC people.
Okay, y'all, please pre-order this book. I'm going to be pre-ordering it. I'm so excited, and deep, sincere congratulations to you for getting it out there wherever it was channeled from. It's going to be such a blessing for so many folks. Thank you for speaking your truth. So as we say goodbye, where do you now feel pleasure in your body? And what is your heart carrying with you into this great big wild?
I do feel like I definitely feel it all through my heart center and up through the top of my head. And what am I carrying with me from our time together? Oh, just that life has so many layers, and that feeling the pain and laughing through it, if that's what feels right at the time, and feeling the joy, it's all part of it. And I wouldn't want to give up any of it, honestly.
Yes. I feel that too. I feel like my inner child is so happy right now. That's like, thank you. Thank you, Dalia, for speaking the truth and allowing us to laugh this evening. And also, carrying that into the wild with me, and just like, you can go through some absolutely fucked up shit in your life, but to be able to laugh when it feels right in your body, and like find people who are like, yeah, I know what you've been through, is so beautiful. I don't know if it quite makes it worth it, but damn, it makes it a lot better.
Oh, that is so well said. Yeah, that's beautiful.
So thank you so much again, Dalia, for being on the podcast. And I will definitely be sharing when the part one of this podcast comes out on Dalia's podcast. So I will be sharing with folks when that comes out. And again, congratulations on your book.
Thank you so much. And congratulations to you for all of the work that you're doing with Sunseed. It's really exciting.
That's it, y'all. That's our show. Big thank you to Cloud Stokely for providing their song Lo-Fi Beats to contemplate YT supremacy on season 3. Your music is a whole vibe, fam. And thank you for your continued support, y'all. Keep pleasuring yourselves.
Tin Tiny Talks is a global, non-traditional artist in residency based in the Northwest, focusing on the Black, Indigenous, trans, gender non-conforming, two-spirit, and queer creatives. We'd like to congratulate our 2021 recipients: Belinda Rose, A.C. Ramirez de Arellano, Kareem Jackson, Cloud Stokely, Calisto Nanan, D&D Productions, Nick Labonte, Zinnia Opio, Marla Darling, and Mix Dalia de Lubel. You are the definition of excellence. Go to cravetheater.org to meet the artists.